Hi there, my name is Kat. Welcome to the Production Possibility Frontier video, also known as the Production Possibility Curve. Let's get started. What is the PPF? The PPF can be used to illustrate and explain important economic concept of scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. The PPF can be defined as a curve that shows combinations of two goods that are attainable when resources are fully and efficiently employed. This curve assumes that there's only two goods in the economy and that they can be produced at the same time, and all available resources can produce either of the two goods. The slope of the curve represents opportunity cost, which is the cost of choosing one good over the other, or the value of the best foregone opportunity. The PPF relies on a term called Ceteris paribus, which simply means all things remaining constant. So in this case, what we're going to keep constant is the amount of resources and economic conditions. So that was just a read through of the slide. Just to explain the slide a bit more. So in the PPF, the concept of the PPF, what we are assuming is that there's an economy, an imaginary economy. In this economy, there can only be production of two goods. So good A and good B. Let's say, for instance, food and clothes. This economy now needs to choose which combination of the two goods are they going to produce. They can either, devote all of their resources to producing one good, or all of their resources to producing another good. However, we know that it does not work that way, as we need food to eat and we also need clothing. So they need to choose which combination of the two goods are they going to produce. So the curve itself actually shows you the possible combinations that can be produced with the given resources in this economy of the two goods. So yeah, let's look at it. So this is how the PPF looks like, the production possibility curve. As you can see there, it is downward sloping. So that's one of the property of the PPC. What this means is that there's a negative relationship between food production and clothing production. So meaning, if you want to produce more of food, you need to sacrifice some of your clothing production. And yeah, and then you can see point B there, it's when this economy decides to devote all of their resources to producing food. Therefore, they will have zero clothing production, or they can decide to produce only clothes. Therefore, they will have zero food items in their economy. This is not ideal. No economy will produce here, but yeah, it is possible. It's a possibility. Hence, it is part of the curve, and the curve is called production possibility curve or production possibility frontier. So it shows you the production possibilities, even if these two, A and B, they're a bit unrealistic. So what an economy will do, it will most probably produce there at point C or point D, or anywhere on the curve. Anywhere on the curve, that's where they will produce. So a point that is beyond this, beyond the curve, for instance, point F, that would be unattainable. Because remember, with that term of ceteris paribus, we are assuming that the resources and the economic conditions in this economy remain constant. So meaning there is no way you can get more resources to produce more of both goods. You have to use the given resources, and with the given resources, if you want to produce more of one good, you need to sacrifice another good. That's just how it is, because resources are scarce. They're limited to what is given in that economy. And production here at point E, that is underneath the curve, that is inefficient production, because you could be producing beyond. So you could be producing there, you could move up there, up until the curve, producing at a point there. So if you're producing at point A, you're not using all your resources efficiently, therefore there's wastage, and yeah, we call that inefficient production. So meaning from here, you are able to actually produce more of food and clothing if only you produce you employ your resources um, efficiently. And yeah, that's about it. And to see the trade-off relationship, we're gonna use let's use point C and D. So let's say, for instance, in this economy, all of the sudden people want more food. So instead of producing 50 food items, they want to increase it to 75. What needs to happen? They would need to decrease their clothing item from 150 to 100. So how did they get there? So what they did is on the current production 50, they just moved to the curve and then they went down. And then that's how they got to point D. And then to increase production to 75, they started there, 75, they moved towards the curve to point C. And then once they touched the curve, they moved down to get 100. So that's how, you can draw your own curve. So sometimes in a test situation, exam situation, they give you a table, what we call production possibility schedule. And in this table, on the one column, or on the one row, there would be a production possibility for food. So let's say it will be 5, 10. I mean, start from 0, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, you know. And then on the other row, there would be production possibility for clothing. So this one, it will be actually um, different. Let's say this one is 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So, and then using those, you would be expected to actually construct your own production possibility. So the best way to start is at the point of 0. So just get your intercepts and then work out the rest. So yeah, that's something that I can cover in a tutorial section. So if you want to go through that book for the private tutorials, you can go through a couple of those examples. Those are some of the additional things that I cover in my tutorials. All right, moving on. Here, the scarcity problem. Um, just going to read through it because I've already talked to it in the previous slide. The scarcity problem can be explained by the movement along the curve from point C, where the economy is producing 75 food items and 100 clothes, to point D, where the economy is producing 50 food items and 150 clothing. What this movement shows is that in order for the economy to produce 50 more clothes, it needs to sacrifice 25 food items. Thus, a choice needs to be made of which quantity of the combination of the two items or goods should be produced because resources are scarce. So if you were asked in a test situation, explain, the trade-off, or the how the scarcity is shown in this curve, or the concept of choice, you would write something like this. Okay. And then now we getting into another section, you know, where now we relax the assumption that economic conditions remain the same. So now we are assuming that in this economy, there's better technology or techniques, or there's an increase in resources in producing both food and clothing items. What will happen? The PPC will actually shift outwards. And if the opposite happens, it will shift inwards. So in the next slide, I will show you the illustrations. So there we go, moving from the blue curve there to the red curve. That's an outward shift. So what this represent is economic growth, or there's an increase in both the production of clothing and food. So this can only happen when we relax the assumption that, economic conditions remain the same. And then when that assumption is it's held, or when we rely on that assumption that economic conditions cannot change or remain the same, what will then happen? If you wanna increase, or you want an increase in production of the one good, you need to sacrifice the production in the other good. But then when that assumption is relaxed, then you are able to get this shift. And then here we illustrate the movement to the inward movement when there's actually a decrease. So the shift uh, is inward when production of both resources or both um, items is less. So that is like when we're in a recession. And then let's look at other shifts, other possible shifts. So there can be a situation whereby production in the one sector of the economy improves because of better technology or whatever it is, better techniques. But then in the other sector of the economy, it remains the same. So what happens? Let's take, for example, luxury goods and education. So production in luxury goods increased because of better technology, and education remains the same because people just don't want to be teachers. So yeah, they don't get into that industry. So what happened? There will be a swivel on the side of the luxury goods. So meaning the curve will only shift on this side, and the starting point of education will still remain the same. So this is just to show you another possible shift that can happen. And yeah, key takeaways from this is know the relationship between scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. So how you can explain that in terms of the production possibility curve. Know what ceteris paribus means and when it applies. Why do we apply it? So actually, to just give you more context, this term, we use it when we want to study the relationship between two variables. So when we assume that other things are kept constant, it makes it easier for us to study the relationship between two variables. So that's why it is such an important concept in economics, and even in econometrics, it is used quite a lot. And then know on the PPC when there's efficient production, which means production on the curve, inefficient, meaning it's a point under the curve, for instance, point E, and unattainable, that's like, for instance, point F, a point that is beyond the curve. Know when there is a movement along the PPF, which represent that trade-off relationship when we assume that economic conditions remain the same. So if you want more of one good, you need to decrease the other good, and know when there is a shift. For instance, when we relax that um, assumption and we allow for a possibility of both products or both production increasing, then there will be a shift of the curve, or decreasing, then it will shift inwards. And yeah, that's about it. Like and subscribe to this channel to get an update of when I post more videos. I will try to keep posting as much as possible to get you ready for your exams, for those who haven't wrote your June exams. And I will also start posting things on semester 2, just so you can get a head start. And yeah, bye. That's about it. Hope you learned a lot.